as we all know, there is an upcoming game from Ubisoft people are excited for. 2026 is a wild year, my friends, but that's how we roll. Life keeps you guessing, sure does. But in the wake of all of this, I need you to understand that things are happening, changing and moving and shifting in the background offices at Ubisoft. Things are not the same as they have been for years, which is going to be music to many people's ears. Some of it we are seeing results of in generalized attitudes. Some of it remains to be seen. To be perfectly clear, Black Flag Resynced was greenlit years ago. It was greenlit with the old management. At the beginning of this year, they brought in new management. Notably, they got rid of like Marc-Alexis Cotier, who that was at the end of last year. He was from Quebec. He was the guy behind like the AC Infinity push. His push was like, go big with AC, make it live service, make it kind of like Call of Duty, put everything in the Infinity hub so it's all on one launcher. And then AC gets like annual updates and new experiences through that portal. You buy a skin in one game, that skin carries over to the next game. It was this mentality of turn everything into Fortnite, basically. That was his big push. He got booped out. He now is suing Ubisoft for effectively terminating him. He says, like, officially they offered him another role, but it was going to be at a different creative house. So he has worked on AC his whole life, and he was taken off of AC. And so he said effectively it was a demotion, which was basically firing him without firing him. So he's now suing them saying, you basically fired me, even though you didn't send me a termination letter or anything. So that's in the courts and they'll figure that out. Who knows how that results, but Mark is gone is the point. And I need you to also understand that there's a big separation within Ubisoft, specifically with like Quebec City, the Quebec team in Quebec, and Montreal. Montreal is the team that has their studio based out of that old like textile factory. So Ubisoft, you've seen pictures of it. I almost guarantee you this building, it's very, very iconic, big Ubisoft building, big brick building, very beautiful. Used to be like a textiles factory, and it's now home to thousands of Ubisoft devs. It like stretches all the way back. It's massive. Montreal is like their darling child. Okay. This is the kid who was first born and got drafted into the NFL at 19. Okay. Like this is the golden child studio. Quebec is also very, very big and very successful, but Quebec approaches things very differently. So Montreal is behind a lot of people's favorite Assassin's Creed games. It's behind like Black Flag. They did AC Origins. They did Ubisoft's favorite that made the most money of any game they've ever made, which was Valhalla. And they also, I mean, they're just like, they're the big guys. They're the big guys. Like when they work on something, it does well. And they've been the golden child studio for a long time. But what happened is Marc-Alexis Cotier, he was from Quebec. Quebec also, in terms of Assassin's Creed, just in general, they tended to not take the lore super seriously. They tended to be very fast and loose with it. They lean more into fantasy and less on keep it grounded within like the Isu storyline or whatever. And you felt that in the games, like whether you play Syndicate, which was Quebec, or you play AC Odyssey, which was Quebec, or you play like, well, even Shadows. I mean, as we all know with Shadows, if you remember the Attack on Titan, you remember that one? AC Shadows. Every time I see a picture of it, dude. This was also Quebec. And listen, I know some of the guys, I met a couple of guys that work on the post-launch support for AC Shadows. They're legitimately really cool guys. They're passionate. They are really, really talented people. But they just, however this happened was bad. Okay, because this, I'm going to go out on a limb here. Maybe this is my hot take of the day. I don't think this should have gone out. Because I think that Ubisoft Quebec had this broader approach where it was like, well, it's a free DLC. It's a free quest. So you get what you pay for. Like, you can't really complain. It's free. But I don't think they truly appreciated how this reflects very badly on the whole game and the whole franchise. Like, you can't just do this. My understanding from the rumblings I've heard is that this really ticked off some people high up within Ubisoft. Like, this whole thing caused a lot of drama. It is apparently one of the like final nails in the coffin that pushed for a lot of new leadership and a lot of new direction. They already were feeling reportedly that they needed to take things in a new direction after Shadows, but I think this was like the, yep, okay, we're pretty confident that that we can't do these things anymore. So with that, Mark is booted out. Mark comes from Quebec, and he has this general approach towards Assassin's Creed that really perturbs a lot of longtime fans because, again, like I said, it's not focused on keeping it grounded in the lore. They will go and do things like Attack on Titan crossovers, throw in magic. Of course, AC Odyssey. It's been 8 years now. I can show you this. Spoilers for AC Odyssey if you haven't played it, okay? Spoilers. AC Odyssey had freaking Minotaur in it and like Medusa. It had a Cyclops, you know? And you could sort of twist your way into this with like, I guess with some Isu stuff. And I think they like experimented with it a little bit to get there, but like they straight up just had fantasy stuff in the game. And I think Odyssey is really, really good as a fantasy adventure game, but as like an Assassin's Creed game, it just doesn't, it pissed off a lot of people because it just isn't even trying to be grounded, right? And but that was like the Quebec general attitude towards Assassin's Creed is you don't need to be grounded. It's a video game, whatever. And so that's been their approach. But when Mark left, it signaled, okay, they're not happy with how he was doing things. Maybe it's just like by virtue of his choices with the projects he greenlit, games were taking way longer to put out. Maybe that's what it is. But then we saw who they hired. And who they hired was a series of teams, or individuals rather. Back in February, they posted an article outlining some new hires that they had. Martin Schelling, Jean Guidon, and Francois de Belay. They should hire me to just poorly pronounce things. Martin, right here. Martin is the new head of the brand. Jean is the head of content. And Francois is the head of production excellence. Now, notably, when these guys took over, they came in and started reevaluating everything that was on the books for like Assassin's Creed. And to be clear, this is within the production house called Vantage Studios. So Ubisoft restructured, they put a bunch of teams into different houses or different buckets, and each one of those buckets focuses on 2 or 3 IP, and that's what they do. They just do that. So instead of having 50 teams working on one game, you have like 2 or 3 teams that focus on it and just specialize in that. What is particularly interesting is that these 3 guys all come, I'm pretty sure Francois does as well, but they all come from Montreal. They do not come from Quebec. There's this like shift that seems to have happened where now they're going back to guys whose history is on games like Black Flag and Origins and Valhalla. That's their specialty, because that's basically what Ubisoft wants to get back to. They want to get back to Black Flag when fans were super excited, and Valhalla when they were making $1 billion with a single game. That's what they want. Shocker. Shocker. So they bring these guys in. They start doing major evaluations. Notably, Francois instills a new chunk of, or a new standard, a new quality standard. So he came in and set a bunch of rules. We don't know what these are. Now, I got to sit down on a Zoom call, or I think it was a Microsoft Teams call. Times are tough over at Ubisoft. I'm kidding. Teams is fine. But we hopped on a Teams call and we talked. I asked Jean if he could clarify and tell us what the new quality standards were. And he said he couldn't go into that, which honestly, fair. I'm sure it's a very complicated list of things. Like they have to have this number of bugs reported by this stage in development. I'm sure there's like technical stuff with it. So it's not as simple as just like, yeah, we have to do this. Like I'm sure it's harder to get into in a quick call with people. But what's interesting is that this new quality standard seemingly caused a shift in tons of different timelines. So Black Flag was delayed. It was rumored that it was originally supposed to launch in February or March of this year. Originally, I think it was late last year as well, was the original timeline, but it got delayed again once they put new quality standards in. And everything else got delayed. So Hexe was also delayed, and a bunch of other stuff that they're working on with, like, in that production house, like Far Cry delayed, and a bunch of these other things were shifted because of these new quality standards. We don't know exactly what those are, but clearly the quality standards were significant enough and different enough that they required months of added development time, which, again, just to stress that, takes millions and millions of dollars. I believe the original AC Shadows delay from November to February before it was delayed again to March of 25. I believe that initial delay of like 3 months, Ubisoft said, cost them around 25 million euros. So just one delay for one game costs tens of millions of euros. Imagine what delaying your whole portfolio does. I mean, they're spending a lot of money because of these new quality standards, okay? So that happens. We don't know exactly what like Martin and his direct input is, but he's the head of the brand, so maintaining like healthy outlook within the community and the fandom, making sure when people hear Assassin's Creed, they don't think live service slop garbage. They think, I want to play that. I can't wait for the next one. That's like part of his role, is keeping the brand healthy, which it clearly was not. Okay. Doesn't take an industry analyst to tell you Ubisoft was having trouble keeping their brands determined to be like premium. You know, they're having trouble with that. But what we do know is that Jean started to review a lot of stuff, and he got his hands dirty pretty much immediately. Okay. So Jean, just so you know, he's the previous creative director on Black Flag and creative director on AC Origins. He's got a production background from a design perspective. So his role and his experience is in building these games. And he specifically has worked on fan favorite games and also games that significantly overhauled the way things were at the time. So he's kind of the guy that comes and reinvents AC when it's in trouble. He came and reinvented it with like Black Flag. And when I was on the call with him, he mentioned how like when they originally came up with the idea for Black Flag, when he came up with the idea with a couple of coworkers and they decided they wanted to pitch it, it was insane. Like the idea that we're going to take this franchise, which at that point, when they were doing the original ideation, I mean, they're coming off of like AC2, they're coming off of like Brotherhood, like they're coming off of these games, which are very different from Black Flag. The idea that you're going to take that game that's basically about hunting down and beating up popes and like light parkouring through medieval cities, and you're going to take that and make it about pirates? How does that work? But it worked, clearly, demonstrably. It worked very, very well. It's one of people's favorite AC games ever. So he's got the vision. He's got the vision. But he came in and started using his vision to evaluate the different projects that Ubisoft was working on at the time. Black Flag Resynced being one of them, apparently, which is part of why like they've done one delay to push it to July, because they wanted to tweak some stuff. I don't think it was anything that major, but it does seem like the marketing approach to Black Flag has been a direct reaction to fan feedback, specifically stuff like the RPG mechanics. You notice how Ubisoft has been very forceful. It is not an RPG. It is not an RPG. I saw a TikTok posted from an official Ubisoft account where they said, here are the 5 things to know about Black Flag Resynced. Number 1, it's not an RPG. The idea that they're coming out so forcefully and saying that, when that is like one of the primary frustrations from the fandom, shows that, okay, they're like trying to listen. Okay, interesting. But just today, we got some further reporting about something else that Jean did. Now, what we knew before this was that Jean took over for AC Hexe. Quick rundown on Hexe. That is the game coming from Montreal. It's the next like big mainline Assassin's Creed game. And that one is expected to be very, very different. So it's also kind of a reinvention. It's expected to be way, way darker, way more gritty. This was the trailer they dropped back in 2022 for it. Just kind of a sizzle reel, but basically it's set during the German witch trials. It was said to feature magical elements, supernatural elements, where you were going to play as a woman named Elsa, who is accused of being one of these witches, and she has magical abilities to like possess animals and use those to get around situations. So there's city guards. She possesses a cat, and then the cat goes and distracts them, knocks something off of a wall. It falls on the floor, distracting the guards, and then you go back in. That's what we understood it to be. But now there are further leaks of what Jean might have actually done when he saw the game after coming back to Ubisoft in February, because he sat down with the team and he took over. Notably, right as he came in, a lot of leadership stuff started to shift and change. So the previous game director was a guy named Clint Hawking. Clint Hawking was the creative director on like Watch Dogs Legion, for example. So he's worked there. He's put some stuff out, nothing crazy commercially successful, but you know, he's been there, worked at LucasArts, at Valve. I mean, he's got an impressive resume, but specifically the projects he's put out, Legion was the last one. Prior to that was Watch Dogs 2, Far Cry 2. And he did like Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell and some of that stuff. But you notice Hexe is not listed here. Well, it's because he was creative director on that for several years. When also, fun little fact, he's the guy that came up with the term ludonarrative dissonance. I don't know if you knew that, but he's the guy that came up with that in a talk a few years back. So when IGN was talking about how Mouse PI for Hire is a 6 out of 10 because of too much cheese and ludonarrative dissonance, they're borrowing that term from him. Fun fact. But he left out of nowhere. And then it's reported that Jean is taking over. And he's now in the captain's chair, and he's getting his hands dirty, doing a bunch of reviewing of the game and the current state of things and all this. And then we got another update that another one of the game's directors left in the last few days. This was posted April 27th. As you can see here, this individual, Benoit Richer, said that he's leaving Ubisoft. He announced his news on LinkedIn over the weekend, revealing that he was moving to an indie studio. Quote, "This is the beginning of a new chapter. I'm joining Servo Games as game director," he said, "an indie studio of industry veterans aligned around a shared vision of the industry and experienced creation with a strong complementary skill set." Richer had been a game director for Ubisoft since 2017. Prior to that, he spent 7 years at Warner Brothers Games as a game director. The news of the departure came at the same time Ubisoft decided to scale back the team work on Hexe. We'll get to that in just a second. Not to get ahead of ourselves. But he leaves. So what is happening? Hexe was rumored to be coming like this fall, and now the game director's leaving. And prior to that, the other game like creative director left. Like, what is going on with Hexe? Well, we have some reporting from Tom Henderson. Assassin's Creed Hexe loses 50 developers as the game targets 2027. What seems to have happened is that Jean went back in, looked at the game, and found many things he was not thrilled with. And so he decided to change it. And in changing that, that meant that some people who thought those decisions were the right ones left. And it meant that they are redoing fairly large chunks of the game. What are these chunks specifically? Well, let's see. Approximately 50 devs working on AC Hexe have been taken off of the project as the new AC leadership team makes changes. The decision to scale back 50 developers on Assassin's Creed Hexe came last week, just a couple of days after the announcement that an unannounced project named Altera had also been canceled. If you don't remember this, Altera was like Ubisoft's version of Animal Crossing. They'd been working on it for a while, and apparently they just chose to walk away from it, not thinking it was going to be successful, so why spend time and money on it? It's understood that around 50 developers have been moved from Hexe to Ubisoft's Inter-Project team, which is home for developers who are not assigned to a project at Ubisoft. According to sources familiar with the matter, members of the Inter-Project team are required to secure a project at Ubisoft within a 3-month period, or they could face redundancy. So basically you get taken off of a game, you go in limbo, you work on a little bit of everything, and you need to get recruited onto a full team. Otherwise you could be laid off. Right. As first mentioned by Jonathan, Jonathan, if you don't know, is a French YouTuber that leaks a bunch of stuff about Ubisoft and about Assassin's Creed. According to Jonathan, Jean Guidon, who began overseeing the Assassin's Creed franchise earlier this year, has decided to remove, quote, the cat companion feature end quote, from Assassin's Creed Hexe. Instead, the game will take a more grounded approach to witchcraft, with the game's protagonist understanding the science of chemicals, etc. For instance, she knows how to make a smoke bomb, which to ordinary citizens makes it look like she can disappear. So the presumption being that prior to Jean coming in and overhauling some of this stuff, the game was built around like actual magic, like she actually pops something that makes her invisible. And like actually is using magic in the way you would expect in like AC Odyssey or AC Shadows and some of the stuff that they would do with that, where it's like just straight up supernatural. Now he comes in, says, no, we're not doing that. It's going to be grounded. It's going to make sense in the universe. It's going to be like, you can have scientific stuff, but we're not just doing straight up magic. It needs to be like explained. Okay. He comes in and says, we're going to ground it. So she can still have that effect on people. They can think that she's turning invisible, but the reality is that she's like making a smoke bomb, which they mistake for that because they don't know the science behind it, right? Which honestly, I kind of like that. At the time of writing, AC Hexe is penciled in for June 2027 release, but sources speculate that a recent decision to scale back by 50 developers is an attempt to stay under budget and potentially delay the game to holiday of 27. Several more Assassin's Creed games are in development at Ubisoft, including Black Flag Resynced, a multiplayer game under the codename Invictus, and another remake, which is rumored to be of the original game. I'm gonna be real. Look here, look, listen. I kind of dig it. Okay, so here's like, if you're going to do any one of these things, I think it needs to be consistent. One of my frustrations with Assassin's Creed has been that from one game to the next, they feel like totally different franchises. Like you will play a game from like a Montreal team and it feels one way. And then you play another game from Quebec and it's just straight up like fantasy. You know, you'll come off of Origins, which is trying to keep it grounded in the lore, and like in the post-launch support they did Rift stuff where of course in the DLC you fight like or the second DLC, the was it Valley of the Pharaohs or something like that, they do like experimental stuff in the DLC and I think people are generally fine with that, but in the base game it's trying to keep it pretty well locked and loaded in the lore and in the universe. And then you play like Odyssey, where just straight up you're fighting Minotaurs and Cyclopses and Medusa, and it's just all attempts at keeping it grounded are out the window and it goes full fantasy. If you're going to go full fantasy, go full fantasy. Like for the whole franchise, make that the direction you go and keep it consistent. But don't do this like half and half thing, because it just ends up frustrating both players and both gamers, where there's people who like the fantasy who then play the next game and it has like no fantasy and it's really trying to be more realistic and grounded. And they're frustrated because like, where's the magic dragon? I remember people were asking about AC Shadows. They were like, is there going to be a like dragon fights? Because you guys did that with Odyssey. Is there going to be anything supernatural and anything like that? Because that player expectation gets developed when you're constantly switching back and forth. And so hearing that they're trying to align the visions more makes sense to me, especially if Jean is being given creative control to come in and say, yeah, we're going to try to ground it. We're going to try to keep the games locked in the lore and feeling like a coherent franchise again. I respect it. Now, there are things we don't know. So we don't know to the fullest extent what role like magic played in the game. It could have been, I mean, let's be completely honest. There's always things we don't know. And never ever doubt a team's ability to do something that maybe sounded good at one point that ends up just not playing very well in the end product. It happens in game development all the time. Who knows? Maybe they had the idea for a cat that's magical and provides witty banter. And then you start playing AC Hexe and this cat won't shut the hell up because they were trying to do a Mimir thing where like he's constantly talking to you. And it's like, can we shut up the cat, please? Maybe it's something like that. Like, we don't know what we don't know. Okay, it's possible the cat never shut up. It's possible the cat talked. It's possible that the cat had wings and flew. It's possible that there were whole gameplay segments where like Elsa, the alleged name for the protagonist, she just starts like pulling out a literal wand and doing Harry Potter magic with it. Like, it's possible. Apparently this is Harry Potter magic. I was imagining using the wand like, you know what I mean? But anyway, all I'm saying is we don't know what we don't know. But Jean's track record is pretty good. This is the guy behind AC Black Flag. Hot take alert. I'm a fan. If you couldn't tell, I have Edward behind me in the studio. Big fan. Frankly, I give it a thumbs up. He's behind AC Origins, which I will admit I am also a big fan of. Not just because I love ancient Egypt. I literally have pyramids and like a death mask and little stone pyramids behind me. I do love ancient Egypt, so I am a little biased there. But I also love Origins. That game was like a literal dream come true for me. So for me, Jean can kind of do whatever he sees and thinks is going to be best for the franchise. And I'm probably going to be much more confident in his choices over like some director I don't know, or previously like the creative director for Legion, which Legion was a very cool technical showcase. Watch Dogs Legion. They kind of forgot to make a fun game at the same time, but you know, don't you hate it when that happens? Work on a game for years and I was like, oh right, it's got to be fun. Oops. Very impressive technical showcase, but just wasn't that great of a video game. But I think when it comes to Assassin's Creed, I think Jean is the guy who probably knows what fans are going to really eat up more than like the guy that did Watch Dogs Legion, right? Now, still, at the end of the day, AC Hexe represents a pretty major shift for the franchise. It also represents the first time we will see a game that was made with a significant amount of time spent under the new leadership, because realistically, if it ends up actually shifting to like late 27, that could mean that it will have spent, you know, a year and a half, 2 years under the new leadership team that is trying to get the ship righted, that's trying to take Assassin's Creed back into its heyday. And so I think that's when we will actually see the results of their efforts and the fruit of their labor. So I think it's a pretty pivotal moment. Like Black Flag Resynced, most of that work was done before these guys got in there. They can do a few little things. They can target the marketing beats. They can approach things a certain way, but in large part, most of the work was done before they came on. Same with like AC Invictus, which is the upcoming multiplayer game. That's not going to be indicative in my expectation of like Hexe, because I think that Invictus, the vast majority of work was done under Marc Alexis Cotier and under the previous guys. I don't think that is predominantly, you know, going to be reflective of the other stuff. But I think they understand that this is a big moment that they need to nail, and they've got to come out swinging with Black Flag Resynced. Invictus needs to not be like so overly monetized, and like multiplayer is an old school thing with AC. People forget, but multiplayer was a mode in many AC games for a very, very long time. It was primarily Unity actually that killed it off because Unity, but you know, that multiplayer is not crazy as a concept for Assassin's Creed. We don't know details exactly of how it'll play, of course, but it's not impossible that ends up being decent or whatever. It just depends on a lot of things, like how they monetize it, how they frame it, all of that. But I think that they understand that they have a chance to actually kind of turn things around a little bit, and seeing the excitement for Black Flag is a prime example of how you can actually do this. Like you could actually revitalize the fandom significantly and get them stoked for Assassin's Creed again. You could actually, no joke, do that, but you gotta deliver, and the execution has to be right, which is why seeing that Jean came in and felt so strongly about changing this, that he's willing to restructure the team, potentially delay it by another handful of months, and overhaul major components of how the game was, and take over directly as basically the director of the game, take it over and overhaul a bunch. That is very interesting to me. And again, like I said, at the end of the day, I'm more inclined to be excited for Jean's creative decisions than the previous directors. I think the other directors, obviously very talented individuals. To be a game director at all in this industry, you have to be very talented to get to that level to direct a game. Making a game, period, is a miracle. But getting to the point where you can direct an entire team to make a video game shows you clearly are very, very talented, very smart, and you know what you're doing. But just when it comes to creative decisions as it pertains to a franchise and a franchise's direction, it's hard to argue that like Jean is not the guy to make a lot of these big decisions. Again, Martin also, as the head of the overall brand, has a lot of say in this as well, where he's coming in and he's trying to make decisions, specifically listening to fan feedback. If fans are telling you they're sick of the RPG open world thing, listen. Crazy, right? If they tell you, can we just cool off with the RPGs every 2 years? Maybe listen. It's amazing how easy this becomes when you just start listening. It's why I was really encouraged to see that like Jean made it a point to try and sit down and listen to people give feedback about the franchise, even if that feedback was kind of negative. Because I'll be real, on that call when we were offering our opinions, they asked us, they were like, how do you feel about the franchise right now? What are your frustrations? What do you love? What do you hate? Like, tell us about it. A lot of the feedback was not positive. A lot of feedback, I'm sure, was not what you want to hear. You want to hear, oh, I love what you guys are doing. It's all great. Dude, there were people on there who run pretty niche channels on Assassin's Creed, and they were very upset and passionate about like modern day storyline stuff, about Isu storyline stuff being abandoned, about the focus on RPG stuff, the over monetization, all of this stuff. And he listened to it, and they took notes, and they were like actually trying to get the feedback. And that makes me more confident that things could actually change. Very, very, it's doing the right things, listening, and then figuring out how to act and move forward where you need to go. Why do all these decision makers seem to not be gamers? I'm not sure what you mean, because like the people you see on screen now are like OGs. These guys have been making games for decades and have made some of the fan favorite games of all time. Like Black Flag is literally listed on like commonly on lists of the greatest video games ever made. And though that's one of the games that these guys worked on. So they are gamers. As for if you're talking about like previous leadership or previous companies and other companies where they tend to promote people who maybe are not like, they're more business people, like a Jim Ryan, for example. I think that's usually just an artifact of executive leadership wanting to get somebody who's focused on the business to come in and run the business. And they think that being involved with the other stuff isn't that important, but we will see. But they're actually listening to a lot of the feedback. For example, like even something, this is probably honestly a direct result of like the Stop Killing Games movement. So shout out Stop Killing Games. Looks like it's actually having an impact. But for example, they've already clarified that Black Flag Resynced will be fully playable offline. So if you want to access like, of course, the in-game store, you need an online connection, but it's not going to lock you out if you are offline. They're going to let you play it offline. Imagine that. Can you even imagine playing a game without an internet connection? What is this? What is this? 2003? It's insane. It's insane. But it does show that, again, this isn't that hard if you actually start listening. Okay, it's just not that hard. But as for like broader things, do I think it'll actually slip to late 2027? That to me makes more sense. If I'm being real, our understanding of this game, we don't know much about it, but my understanding is that it's much darker in tone, it's grittier, it's darker, and as a result, release it in October. Like, make it a Halloween spoopy game. Like, that just makes sense to me. If you're gonna make a game kind of spooky, put it out in a spooky time of year, rather than June. So like releasing a spoopy game in June feels like releasing a Christmas movie in April. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I would not be surprised at all if it gets like pushed later in the year. That would not shock me. Moving 50 devs off of it, this also could just simply be, I don't know how many people they have working on it in general, but let's say they have 300 or 400 people working on it directly, not just like doing contract stuff, but directly. Maybe 50 of those people, if they were in like QA stuff, they were working on final polishing or something, or localization and things, but you've got to rewrite a bunch of dialogue, you got to redo a bunch of this stuff. And so their work is just not going to be that useful until you get further along in redoing some of this stuff. Unassign them so they're not just sitting at their desk, have them go do something else and then redo a lot of this stuff and then go back to it. Her head is kind of big. To be clear, this is not an official picture. I think this is an AI generated picture because we have no artwork. We have nothing official from it. So I'm guessing that this is just AI generated. Hence her head looking like it is a watermelon with eyes. Anyway, I'm optimistic about this. I think that it does make sense given Sean's history that he would want to ground it more and keep it less just broad fantasy and open it up a little bit more. And honestly, I think if anybody knows how to get Assassin's Creed back on track, it's probably these three guys, honestly. Like, it's why when we looked at the article back in February, some of you guys were here on stream when we read it because the news broke and we pulled it up. going through it, it's like, these are actually really good hires. Like, color me surprised. This is like actually pretty impressive. I'm okay. Like, color me surprised. I did not expect to be like, these are good hires. I was braced for it to be like, you know, some of the college buddies of Yves Guillemot's son, and it's all like NFT crypto bros. But no, it was like actually people with an experience on the franchise who really know what they're doing. I was like, okay. So I am much more optimistic than I was certainly in January, for example. But they still have a lot of work to do. Resynced needs to hit, of course. I think Invictus is going to be very fascinating to see how they frame that, because I'm sure it doesn't take a genius to know that even if you nail Black Flag Resynced, announcing and releasing like a multiplayer live service Assassin's Creed game is going to generate discourse. There's going to be talk about that. I'll tell you what. Now, maybe the game is really, really good and people eat it up and love it. That's possible. And maybe that's exactly what they need. Maybe, you know, in a year we'll be laughing that anybody was doubting Invictus. But I think narratively it's going to be a difficult thing to shift, because yes, there were for years and years, Assassin's Creed games had multiplayer game modes, but it's been a long time since then. And so when people think Assassin's Creed now, they think single player game. And so when you do a multiplayer spinoff, it's gonna just be considered weird. It's gonna be considered different. Even if it's not different to the OG games that had multiplayer modes, it's still gonna feel different. But you know, it's why I said pair it with something like Black Flag Resynced. Like if they really, free advice, the best way to do Invictus, in my humble opinion, is to like literally shadow drop it right next to Resynced. Give all of the single player fans something to sink their teeth into that they absolutely love, and then drop the multiplayer game on the side. So even if people are like, I don't like this, they can go play Black Flag instead. Give them something else. You know, that's how I would do it if I was them, but we'll see. We'll see. I don't know if it's even close to finished. I mean, maybe it's been delayed as well. We don't know, but that's how I would avoid the drama. That's how I would avoid it. Invictus probably only on PS6. No, it's expected to be like close. Like it's expected to be this year. Like very close. So. Or Hexe. Yeah, if they dropped it right next to Hexe, that could also be a really good way of doing it. I just think launching it by itself and trying to frame it as a big AC game, which is what I think they were going to try to do when Mark Alexis Cote was in charge. I think that probably creates more drama. If they drop it next to a single player game, you bypass the complaints that you're doing this without a single player game. You're taking it from a single player franchise into a multiplayer franchise. Even though that's not what's happening, even though it is a spinoff, it's going to be framed that way. And you can avoid that by just putting it next to something that's single player and that satisfies people who like that, you know? You know, that's the key. That's the key, my friends. That's the key. That's the key. But overall, I'm optimistic, and honestly, hearing that they are making changes gets me more excited than if everything was staying the same as it was from the last like group of leadership. If they were releasing things the exact same way that they had planned to 2 years ago, I'd be more frustrated by that than hearing, yeah, new leadership came in and is changing stuff, because they're new leaders and they want to do things differently. That is exactly why you get new leaders, is to do things differently. So we'll see what happens with it. But yeah, it looks like Hexe is probably now looking later 2027, which is going to be fascinating, because we also should be seeing that around, like we should be seeing a Far Cry game allegedly around there. Like Ubisoft could come out swinging with a pretty hefty 2027. We were originally thinking that they would have all of this stuff ready by this year. Like we originally thought we were going to get Black Flag this spring, so like March of this year, and that we would get Hexe late this year, which I think was the original plan. But then everything's been delayed and shifted, and they're reworking stuff under the new leadership, and now it's all shifted. So Black Flag, of course, comes in July. Hexe probably comes a year after it was originally slated to come, and it's going to be fascinating. Like Asha for Xbox. Well, yeah, if you're going to bring in new leadership, it's because you need to change things. And so seeing them do something different is exciting, because that's exactly why you do it. He took my thing.